In the world of Terra lives Laycil Lanlot, the grandson of the greatest warrior in history, the First Blade King. However, when his grandfather is executed for supposedly betraying the Empire, his entire bloodline is destroyed. His parents are murdered, his sister is taken away, and he finds himself sold into slavery. What's more, because he cannot use the power of the Holy Seal, he is treated like the bottom of the barrel trash. Despite this, he refuses to take everything lying down and continues acting defiantly. One day, as he gets his daily beating, he is left on the verge of death, and finally, he manages to awaken his innate power. Now, with his newfound strength, he vows to take revenge upon those who have wronged him. The story begins in a world called Terra, where classes are absolute. This rule was set up by the hero himself, revered throughout the nation as the Seventh Blade King. This rule holds extreme power, so much so that even the greatest warrior in history, the First Blade King Laycil Lanlot, who vanquished the Dark Spirit King and saved humanity, wasn't exempted. Now, you might ask what the outcome is for those who break this rule. Well, the fate for those who betray the Empire is execution, and the First Blade King met his demise. Years later, in a shed somewhere, two grown men are seen beating the living daylights out of a young boy, questioning how dare a lowly slave like him defy his master's orders. However, the boy refuses to back down. In an arrogant tone, he deems these men to be nothing more than the lapdogs of the city lord, asking how they can even call themselves masters. A few years ago, "You wouldn't be worthy to carry my shoes," he announces. As it turns out, this boy is none other than the grandson of the First Blade King, Laycil Lanlot. Of course, the men aren't really fond of his high and mighty attitude and continue the beating. After pummeling him to the ground, they begin whipping him with a stick. As per them, he is the son of a rebel, and it's a miracle that the current emperor has allowed him to live this long. Nevertheless, he is now but a lowly slave and should learn his place. Still, Laycil resists, stating that he is reminded of his noble status every once in a while, whenever he comes across scumbags like them. Damn, that was brutal. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Apparently, these men, who like picking on young boys, are the bearers of the Holy Seal, the chosen seal masters, the true symbol of nobility. On the other hand, not only is Laycil the grandson a traitor, he cannot even muster a fraction of the Holy Seal's power. They claim that even if his grandfather were alive, he would die of disappointment after seeing his useless grandson scum, whose only good point is his ability to take a beating. All of a sudden, a young, slave elf girl named Xiaomi comes into the shed. She reveals that the captain has called for these men to join for the training, and hearing their leader's command, they leave, reminding Laycil this is still far from over. As they leave, Xiaomi comes to Laycil's side, asking if he is alright and apologizing. As per her, she was the one who accidentally broke a plate, but Laycil stood up for her and got beaten instead. But Laycil doesn't mind. He explains that it's a man's duty to protect a girl, and they say chivalry is dead. Moreover, the plate was a clear trap set for her. The men have been targeting Xiaomi for quite a while now, and he suggests she stay out of their way. Hearing this manly response, Xiaomi is impressed. Even though he is so weak, Laycil never backs down when facing a stronger foe. Of course, this so-called compliment strikes a nerve with Laycil. Anyways, soon enough, another guy comes around, ordering the two to stop slacking and get back to work. With this, they both head to Grey Rock City's combat training ground, where many soldiers are seen training to protect their country. There, Laycil is cleaning the swords, talking about how it has been 5 years since he was forced into slavery. His mother and father were brutally murdered right in front of him, and his little sister was taken away from him. He blames all of his misfortune on his grandfather and vows to take revenge on those who have wronged him one day. Probably not today. All of a sudden, a soldier hits him in the head, telling him to stop grinding his teeth and get back to work. This makes him realize that first, he must find a way to escape his current situation. Just then, Xiaomi comes to help with his tasks. As they both work, Laycil promises to unleash the power of the Holy Seal, claiming no one will be able to treat him like this ever again. But this confuses Xiaomi, who thought the power of the seal was simply innate. As a result, Laycil reveals that when his family fell, he was imprisoned by those who wanted to know about the First Blade King's power. To accomplish this, they treated him like a guinea pig, doing perverse experiments on him. In the end, they even implanted dark demon cells in his body, trying to awaken his potential. Alas, it was not meant to be. They eventually realized he could never awaken his powers, and was then sold into slavery. These guys aren't joking around. Despite this, he has hope. In his mind, if his body can withstand enough stimulation, he can use the holy seal, and hence, he keeps enduring all the hardships put on him. Suddenly, the two men from earlier sneak up behind him. They grab Xiaomi by her hair, questioning why she hasn't fetched the medicine like she was told. Obviously, this enrages Laycil, and he tries to defend her, but to no avail. While he gets kicked back, Phalo, one of the men, begins harassing Xiaomi, whereas the other continues stomping down on Laycil. Excuse me, harassing a minor? Call the FBI. Nonetheless, Laycil refuses to let Xiaomi get treated like trash and rises up. Get your hands off Xiaomi, he screams, throwing a sword at his attackers. But the men easily parry the block using their innate power of the seal. Another sword begins flying in mid-air, blocking the strike. What's more, he then attacks Laycil as well. Bro is using the force. What is this? Start wars? And although Laycil manages to evade the first time, the sword keeps on following him, ultimately wounding him severely. Just then, Calder Philip, the captain of the Shadow Iron Squad, appears behind them. He scolds his men for wasting time and not training, but the men blame Laycil, explaining he attacked them with a weapon. In response, they only used a small bit of their seal to show him his place. Hearing this, Calder becomes displeased. He walks closer to Laycil and punches him in his wound, whereas one of the men pins him to the ground. However, seeing Laycil not burst out crying after getting struck in his wound impresses Calder. Unfortunately, the poor boy has no holy seal power whatsoever. According to him, Laycil's mother was a psychic genius, his father was among the 5 great alchemist sages, and his grandfather was the first Blade King. However, after Leba betrayed the kingdom, their family was destroyed, and without any power, Laycil has also fallen to slavehood. Way to rub it in. He claims the emperor has been very generous to allow this lowly slave to keep on living, questioning why he just doesn't live quietly and subserviently. Alas, Laycil still doesn't back down. He spits on Calder's shoe, calling him a dog. This angers Calder even more, and he decides to show Laycil how a good slave should act by having his friend demonstrate. Out of nowhere, he pulls a knife and closes in on Xiaomi, explaining that once someone becomes a slave, they are no longer a person and rather a tool for their master's amusement. With this, he then stabs Xiaomi in the chest, and she shrieks aloud. Witnessing such a heinous act, Laycil is unable to control himself. He escapes the clutches of the man pinning him down and pounces on Calder to attack. However, he is far too weak. Yet again, he is kicked in the stomach. This attack drives him over the edge. Slowly, his pain begins to fade, and he realizes he is about to die. There, he hears a voice. The voice confirms his time is near, and hearing this, Laycil begins to think this is the voice of the seal. He figures the stimulus he needed to activate his seal was death, but what use is that? After all, he will die. But he is wrong. The voice reveals it's not his time to die, and instead, it's their time to coexist, claiming he is a dark demon. This leaves Laycil conflicted. From his perspective, demons are the mortal enemies of all humans, and he refuses the demons' help. But that's not for him to decide. As per the voice, humans who can share their lives with demons are far and few in between. What's more, if he agrees to do so, he may not only get to leave, but might also get a little gift. All of a sudden, a red strand of hair appears on his head, and he, in a crazed state, gets up again. Seeing this, everyone is stunned at how this brat is still able to stand on his feet. As such, the soldiers attack him once more, but the voice reveals that, thanks to his bloodline memories, he will now be able to inherit the abilities of his deceased kin. How strong your abilities are depends on how strong your kin are, the voice exclaims. And, if you have been paying attention, his bloodline is special, though that too is an understatement. In the blink of an eye, Laycil punches his attacker, pummeling him to the ground. What goes around, comes around, as they say. What's more, they find an ominous, demonic presence behind Laycil and freak out, perplexed at what is going on. But then, Laycil feels the effects. Out of nowhere, memories begin pouring directly into his mind. The burden is so heavy, in fact, that he begins to shriek out loud in pain, questioning what all this information is. As a result, the demon reveals these are the experiences and the skills of all of his deceased family members. They had all been embedded in his mind, and he has inherited them through the bloodline remembrance. This is also the first time Laycil lays eyes on the demon within him, who leaves after an ominous foreshadowing. Back on the battlefield, the man Laycil just smashed into the ground manages to get back on his feet. Furious about getting struck by a mere slave, he wants revenge and moves in, proclaiming himself to be an incredible sea master. However, when he tries to land a blow, Laycil simply evades. Not only that, he then blocks and dodges the combinations sent his way, gracefully getting out of range just in the nick of time. Eventually, the man begins getting frustrated and deploys his combat arts. However, once more, his attack is blocked. On the other hand, Laycil begins finding all the flaws in his opponent's technique. With clumsy footwork and frantic breathing, he can see clearly through all these flaws. Laycil then kicks the man in the knee, forcing him to writhe in pain on the ground. There, he notices something strange. Although he implemented the kick perfectly, it wasn't enough to break his foe's leg. This makes him realize he is still weak. Even though he was completely untrained a few seconds ago, he has gained all this combat knowledge. Still, no matter how many techniques he has learned, they all are reliant and limited on his physical capabilities, of which he has none. Talk about being useless. I have to become stronger, he thinks. Of course, Calder and the other soldiers who are watching this all unfold are left speechless after seeing their comrade cannot even take down a slave. Calder is taken aback at how Laycil's movements have completely changed from before. In addition, he now exudes a mysterious aura, one comparable to the power of a seal master. Still, the battle is far from over. Fael moves in to help his friend and begins slashing away at Laycil, who dodges every attack with ease. Slowly but surely, a crowd begins to gather, all wanting to see what the commotion is about. The soldiers think this might be a new, unconventional training method, though they all seem to have a distaste for the Shadow Iron group and their antics. Regardless, Laycil dominates Fael and overwhelms him with his techniques. He punches Fael in the stomach, causing him to vomit blood. However, Fael doesn't go down. On the contrary, he manages to grab Laycil's hand, restraining his movements. As a result, his friend, who is revealed to be named Roy, is able to sneak up behind them and attack. Furthermore, Roy deploys the sacred arts again, leaving everyone watching fearful of what is about to come. They even manage to land the blow and begin laughing like maniacs. What kind of soldiers are these? But Laycil is still standing. Despite getting attacked, he announces that low-level sacred arts like this are easy to counter and absorb. What's more, he then decides to show their opponents something interesting, something he learned from his grandfather. Out of nowhere, he unleashes Overmont Bull Strike, blowing away Fael in a split second. Witnessing this, Roy begins wetting his pants. He understands Laycil was able to empower his strikes by using the strikes he took head-on, claiming this is something beyond the capabilities of a normal man. But what he has failed to notice is the fact that the one in front of him is already a seal master. Hearing this, Xiaomi, who is on her last breaths, is amazed at her friend, whereas Roy refuses to believe this claim. He deems this to be a bluff and tells Laycil to stop glorifying himself. Nonetheless, Laycil grows cockier by the second. He reveals that the reason Roy keeps flaunting his title as a seal master is because he knows he is just trash, and today it's his lucky day, since he will get to see high-level art firsthand. As such, Laycil begins to power up to end this once and for all. He begins exuding a massive aura, one that even terrifies Calder, who is skeptical. Even if this young man awakened his seal, there is no way he should be capable of combat arts at this level. He's a damn monster, he claims. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But Laycil's luck has run out. Suddenly, the aura begins to radiate away, making him realize that his physique has left him at only the beginner levels of the seal stages. With his current condition, he cannot execute his grandfather's techniques, and hence, he has to resort to other, more underhanded methods. He delivers a swift kick to the groin, leaving Roy with broken eggs rolling on the ground. Dirty but effective. Meanwhile, Calder is now more furious than ever. Laycil has defaced his entire group and gained immense attention because of this. As a result, he cannot allow this slave's antics to go unpunished. However, before he can do anything about it, Calder is summoned by the city lord. Apparently, some guests have arrived and he has to meet them immediately. And so, Calder takes his leave, telling Laycil he lucked out today, but he will return soon to take care of this lowly brat. Looks like someone is trying to run away. Anyways, this marks the end of this ordeal. The soldiers help their friend to the Saints Guild for healing. On the other hand, Laycil rushes over to Xiaomi's side, who is on the verge of death. All of a sudden, as he carries her to get healed, the other slaves flock towards him. They all compliment Laycil and his actions. They are happy that Laycil stood up for all of them, but he has no time for their nonsense. He has to get Xiaomi help. All the while, the slaves keep going on about how they will become his followers, revealing that Laycil has vented everyone's frustrations today. But Laycil doesn't care. It's the first time all these guys have been so nice to him. But who cares? Now that he has obtained his holy seal and his family's power, he can now take revenge. My opportunity has arrived, he announces, vowing to defeat the murderers of his family. And so the slaves hastily make their way to the Greyrock Saints Guild, where the receptionist, Emily, is seen cleaning the porch. Upon their arrival, the slave supervisor, Mao, asks for her help, claiming they have a dying patient on their hands. Seeing this group, Emily recognizes them to be the city lord's slaves, and Mao confirms this. Apparently, the city lord has been funding the guild, so everyone affiliated with them can get treatment here. As such, he wants them to help Xiaomi, who is on her last legs. As a result, Emily takes them inside to meet with the doctor. There, in the pharmacy, the doctor is seen working on something and is super annoyed about being interrupted. After all, he just treated 2 patients moments ago, but here he is being distracted from work yet again. Aren't you supposed to be a doctor, whose job is treating patients? What's wrong with this town? Moreover, after seeing the patients are just slaves, he questions Emily about why they are here. As such, Emily reveals these slaves belong to the city lord, remarking on how the patient is critically wounded. On the other hand, Laycil recognizes the smell of the potion the doctor is cooking up, revealing it to be Bustui's scene, something he knows thanks to his father's memories. However, the doctor isn't really interested in helping some mere, lowly slaves. Even though they might be under the command of the city lord, he wants no distractions while brewing his potion, and orders Emily to get rid of them. Of course, Laycil won't just give up on his friend's life and simply asks for some medicine and bandages, claiming he can treat her himself if provided the equipment. But the doctor refuses yet again. From his perspective, even a vial of potion costs way more than these slaves' lives, and he tells them to scram. Who made this guy a doctor? Alas, while he deals with Laycil and the others, his potion begins to explode. Seeing this, he tries to go back to prevent a disaster, using his holy seal powers to stabilize the potion. Just then, Laycil intervenes and tells him to stop. Apparently, the doctor has added an excess amount of jordanite. Whatever that is, but the potion is missing glacial shards and herbal leaf. If he continues to put more sacred seal power into it, it might end up exploding. And just like Laycil predicted, the potion begins to splatter everywhere. Sensing impending doom, he rushes out of the room while the slaves try to shield themselves from any damage. Just like that, another set of expensive materials is wasted. There, Emily questions what the Dr. Alan is trying to concoct, telling him to not burn down the pharmacy again. But Alan dismisses her concerns, stating a mere village girl will never understand what he is trying to accomplish. Moreover, he blames her for bringing these slaves here and scolds her, asking how she's going to compensate for his wasted materials. Suddenly, Laycil chimes in. He explains that Alan's formula was wrong from the start. Not only did he include way too much mineral, but he also didn't have nearly enough herbs for the mix. What's more, his proportions were way off and the grease he used was too thick. Regardless of the interruption, his potion was doomed to fail. With this, he explains what Alan was really planning on creating, revealing it to be star-shattering blood, a banned substance, whose formula has been long since destroyed by the guild. Learning his shady business has been brought to light, Alan freaks out. All the while, Emily also condemns Alan for creating this prohibited item, but trying to defend himself from criticism. He deems this all to be for academic purposes. Yeah, right, that's the biggest lie I have ever heard. Consequently, Laycil explains that the star-shattering blood is a potion helpful in elevating one's seal talent. But, as an adverse effect, it can even cause the user to go insane. Hearing all this from a lowly slave, Alan is confused, questioning how he knows all this. But, much to his shock, rather than blackmailing Alan, Laycil promises to help him cultivate the potion. And that is when Alan connects the dots. He realizes that the slave in front of him is not a random nobody. He is the grandson of the first Blade King, Dean Landlot's son. As you might remember, Dean Landlot is Laycil's father and one of the 5 saints who helped found the Saints Guild. And if you don't remember, I just told you so, it's fine. Nevertheless, Laycil begins examining the ingredients, promising he can help Alan with this procedure. Ultimately, giving into his greed, Alan agrees to use this slave's help, managing to convince Emily that this is only for academic purposes. But before they begin, Laycil has demands of his own. Therefore, Alan is forced to heal the dying Xiaomi. While he does so, he vows to kill Laycil if he is tricking him, but eventually, he completes this task, giving Mao a potion for Xiao Mi's qi and blood deficiency. And just as he is done, Laycil sneaks up behind him as well, handing him the star-shattering blood before heading over to Xiao Mi's side. On the other hand, Alan is perplexed at the fact the potion is already completed. He personally experimented for over half a year but still failed countless times, yet this slave was able to create it in an instant. Sounds like a skill issue to me. Not believing his eyes, he goes to check the potion in the report, finding the one Laycil has made is just as described. Laycil even forced Alan to smell the potion, confirming its scent to be the same as the real deal as well. This causes Alan's greed to grow more, and he wants to have this potion for himself. However, out of nowhere, Laycil drops the vial, causing the potion to spill on the floor. That wraps up the academic research, he announces. Obviously, Alan is distraught after having his beloved potion drop and wasted, and he gets enraged. Immediately, he grabs Laycil's collar aggressively, questioning what he thinks he is doing. However, Laycil remains calm, suggesting that if Alan really only wants to research the drug, all he has to do is find the details in a specific compilation of alchemy tales. Finally, Alan breaks character. He reveals that he has no interest in researching the star-shattering blood. Rather, he wants to use it to strengthen his power. Hearing this, Emily is extremely concerned. She reminds Alan that this potion is banned by the guild, and if he continues his efforts, she will be forced to report this matter to the president. However, he simply doesn't care at this point. After all, he doesn't belong to this guild in the first place. As it turns out, all he wants to do is return to the capital. Formerly, he was a member of the Royal Alchemist Guild. But during one of his experiments, he accidentally burned down the lab, destroying numerous exotic and expensive items. For his errors, he was exiled to the Grey Rock City branch. But, according to Emily, as things stand right now, Alan's ambitions are but a dream, claiming he might never return. On the other hand, Alan is confident. If only he could increase his talent level, he is sure he will be able to get back to his old position, hence why he was after the star-shattering blood. With this, he redirects his anger toward Laycil, claiming that this mere slave destroying his potion is a serious crime. Although he might not look like it, Alan is still a second-grade seal master. And trust me, it really doesn't look like it. In addition, he is also the branch's overseer, and as such, he demands to be compensated for his star-shattering blood. Nevertheless, these threats mean nothing to Laycil, who keeps his high and mighty attitude, stating that Alan's existence has no worth. Ouch, that's got hurt. Of course, this enrages Alan further, and he prepares to pummel the slave to the ground. "You shall suffer before crying about its value in front of me," he proclaims as he deploys the sacred arts. But before he can launch his attack, Laycil once again piques his curiosity. He reveals that even without violating forbidden laws, he has methods of making himself stronger, increasing his level. Hearing this, Alan stops his strike just in the nick of time and begins acting nonchalantly, as if he didn't just try to kill the poor boy. Moreover, Laycil also comments on the technique Alan just used, explaining that although it has the ability to distort an opponent's sensory targets, it can have severe recoil effects on the user if its execution fails. Anyways, according to him, all across the world, countless individuals seek power and, in order to achieve it, have explored various skills, including high-tier ones. Still, the skill most highly sought after is the skill to become strong. Thanks for pointing out the obvious. Hearing all this, Alan begins to think Laycil is simply spouting nonsense. Nonetheless, reminding himself that Laycil's father is one of the 5 great sages. There just might be some merit to listening. All of a sudden, Mao proclaims that he will take Xiao Mi back to their lodgings, seeing as it's already dinner time. Although Xiao Mi wants to stay until Laycil's business is complete, she is in no condition to do so, and is taken back. All the while, Alan pesters Laycil about what he has to do in order to attain this skill. Alas, Laycil begins having second thoughts. From his perspective, even if Alan got his hands on this power, someone wicked wielding it will only lead to chaos. Bro spitting facts, Laycil's cockiness, leaves Alan more and more furious with each passing second, and he ultimately reaches his limit. He announces that he has many other ways to make this lowly slave talk, but Laycil remains unfazed, telling him to go ahead and try. And so, Alan, in the blink of an eye, kneels on the ground on all fours. He begins begging Laycil, and acts so embarrassing that Emily Ashe has to intervene. She tells Alan to quit, since such a desperate plea is not good for the guild's reputation. Nevertheless, she is told off and ordered back to cleaning the toilets or whatever. like a good country bumpkin. Eventually, Laycil agrees, though he comes out as the one with the upper hand in this negotiation. Later that night, Laycil returns to the slave quarters where he whips up a meal. Thanks to his alchemy skills, he enhances the food's nutritional value as well as the taste, so much so that the food appears to be shining almost like gold. Eating such delicious food, Shi Yaomi couldn't be happier, making Laycil glad. After the meal, everyone quickly heads to bed. They have to rest up for the next day and all the trials it will bring. There, as everyone sleeps, Laycil has something else in mind. Using the spiritual arts of natural recovery, he heals his fatigue and wounds through sleeping, and despite sleeping for merely 3 hours, all of his pain disappears. I need this superpower as well? Oh Laycil, teach me your ways. As he lays in bed, he realizes that if not for the sacred seal, he never would have noticed how weak he truly is. Even though he has the knowledge and power left behind by his family, he is unable to make use of it. I must grow strong quickly and get out of my current situation, he thinks as he vows to avenge them. Anyways, now that he is fully healed, he decides it's time to strengthen his body. And in order to do so, he uses the technique of his grandfather. Out of nowhere, he unleashes the divine sundering strike. As per him, this technique can push the body to its absolute limits, inducing every part of the body into an intense state of tempering. Due to this, physical capabilities grow at an extreme rate, even with simple training. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean it comes without a price. Not only does this method place profound stress on the body, but it even shortens the lifespan of the user, and Laycil recognizes this technique to be the reason how his grandpa got so strong. Nevertheless, he still continues this brutal training. My strength will surpass yours, he promises to himself as he endures the hellish conditions. The following morning at the guild, Alan is seen annoyed. As it just so happens, Laycil told him to gather some materials for him. After all, Alan isn't getting all this information for free. But the problem is, these materials are things Alan has never heard of before. Stuck on the first hurdle, he begins second-guessing himself. He starts thinking this is all nonsense, and he shouldn't have believed Laycil in the first place. With this, he throws away Laycil's list, but just then, someone enters the guild. Seeing someone here, Alan tells them to leave, claiming this is an authorized area. However, this someone is revealed to be Fina Garcia, a 4th grade SEAL Master. Along with her is also the branch president, 4th grade SEAL Master George Edward. Upon paying closer attention to the list, they both find this to be crucial in what they are looking for. Hearing this, Alan becomes distressed, questioning if that Brack's recipe is really that great. On the other hand, Fina keeps pushing Alan, repeatedly asking if he is the one who wrote this recipe. Meanwhile, Laycil continues with his training throughout the night, and when the others wake up, they are shocked to see Laycil still at it, climbing a hill, while carrying a gigantic boulder. This is some Saiyan-level training. All that's left now is to fight Beerus. Witnessing this, everyone is speechless, wondering if Laycil possesses the heritage of Soul Temperers. Back at the Saints Guild, Fina questions if Alan possesses the heritage of Soul Temperers, but this question leaves him dumbfounded. Apparently, this heritage of Soul Temperers is a legend within the alchemy realm. It's a mysterious alchemy trait, rumored to have dispersed among the guilds. This mystical trait is capable of cultivating creations beyond imagination. But because the energy emanating from these dark materials is deemed excessively potent, the recipe has been decreed for destruction by the 5 sages, and it became known to the wider populace as dark alchemy. Up until now, no one has unveiled the identity of the Temperer, and now here is Alan with the recipe. Of course, he adamantly denies any allegations, and Fina seems to believe him. Despite this, Alan is freaking out. He's left confused as to why he has this treasure trove on him. Moreover, he remarks on how Fina Garcia is the kingdom's prestigious alchemist who has been granted the privilege to travel around the guilds to search for the heritage of the Soul Temperers. In the first place, he never expected her to be in a small town like Grey Rock. Anyways, Fina comments on Alan's recipe, claiming it is peculiar and has the potential to raise the power of the sacred seal. As such, she wants to dive deeper into Alan's research, but, at least for now, she has more important matters to deal with and walks off. As she leaves, she tells Calder, who is revealed to be her escort, to guide her to the city lord. It's explained that, across Terra, seal masters strive non-stop to try and increase their seal power, which is represented by grades ranging to 12. With each higher grade, one's physical attributes and strength increase by leaps and bounds, but breaking through the grades is extremely difficult. Not only does one need extensive cultivation efforts with the help of potions, but they must also regularly refine their combat skills by tempering oneself, which is named Divine Sundering Strike. And that is precisely what Laycil is doing right now. Back in the slave area, the bystanders are standing around, with confused looks on their faces. Apparently, Laycil completed all of the slaves' work on his own, but he doesn't really care about that. These sorts of trivial matters are the last thing on his mind. All he's thinking about is how he needs to get stronger as fast as possible. There, he gets reminded of the words he exchanged with the dark demon inside of him, and begins to wonder what on earth this bloodline remembrance really is. As per the demon, it allows Laycil to inherit the prowess of his deceased family members, and Laycil could feel the power from his mom, dad, and even his grandfather. However, Eileen, his younger sister's prowess was nowhere to be found. This makes him hopeful that maybe Eileen is still alive. After all, she was born with a sacred seal, so she isn't someone anyone would want to mess with. He wants to find her as soon as possible, especially since she is the only family he has left. Regardless, his training is going pretty well, though it's only to be expected from the grandson of the First Blade King. Still, all this training has left his body in tatters, so much so that even healing potions won't help him recover. As such, he has to take other approaches to the matter, which just happens to be a massage from Shi Yao Mi, and it's necessary to be shirtless during it, or else the massage won't work. Naming this technique the supernatural recovery, he uses this method refined by his mom to recover his body from fatigue. Soon after, he feels much better with his muscles all relaxed, and it's all thanks to Shi Yao Mi, who is blushing and red as a beet. Still, it's not like Laycil is out of his deep hole yet. He's still a mere first-grade seal master, and hence, simply expending his spiritual energy for recovery won't help him expand his energy pool. As a result, his main hurdle is his low-level seal. All of a sudden, someone comes rushing in, telling Laycil that someone has summoned him to the Saints Guild. Hearing this, Laycil is excited, thinking Alan must have gathered all the materials. And so, he ventures to the Saints Guild, but cannot seem to find anyone there. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he's ambushed. A sword comes flying towards him, but Laycil manages to dodge, thanks to his superhuman reaction speed. Slowly, Calder, along with a few of his lackeys, sneaks up behind him. Calder is still pissed that one of his men was injured by this brat. He demands Laycil kneel and beg for forgiveness, suggesting that might shift his attitude, and Laycil could avoid a hell of a beating. Alas, Laycil refuses to back down. Unfazed by the threats, he begins talking back. He questions if this is Calder's way of recruiting him. Apparently, now that one of his men is injured, there is no one else to take on the role of that member, meaning the Shadow Iron group is in dire straits. Hearing these retorting replies, Calder loses it and moves in for the kill. Using sacred arts, he unleashes a devastating attack, but Laycil gracefully evades, proclaiming that these combat arts are middle tier. Although it's impressive that a second-grade seal master has middle-tier combat arts, Calder is simply too slow to capitalize on its advantages. All of a sudden, he kicks Calder back, leaving everyone shocked at the fact that the brat could block the captain's strike. Even Calder compliments his foe, but although Laycil has awakened powers of the seal, he cannot surmount the gap between the seal grades. With this, Calder once again moves in to attack and deploys a barrage of attacks. Still, even this isn't enough to stop Laycil, who swiftly dodges all the attacks and closes the distance. The strikes may be ferocious, but you are open everywhere, he loudly announces as he slices into Calder's torso. Having been humiliated by a mere slave, Calder is enraged and humiliated. Not wanting to give up, he slashes at Laycil in his current condition, emanating pure bloodlust. But, in response, Laycil uses a temporary art, murderous retribution, leaving Calder paralyzed in fear. He realizes that this killing intent was retributed, but before he has the time to recover, Laycil seals the deal with a solid punch to the face, marking the victory of the underdog. On the other hand, at the City Lord's castle, Fina is welcomed by the City Lord, Ludolf Hermann, into his office. There, he comments on how he has heard Fina is searching for the heritage of soul temperers, precisely what he has expected from the Empire's trusted genius alchemist. These words flatter Fina, who reveals that her pursuit is for the sole reason, to find a cure for the nether malady. Apparently, this is the disease that the Empire's princess has been suffering from, and Fina is attempting to free her from the suffering. Hearing this, Ludolf talks about a rumor he heard. According to hearsay, most of the soul temperers' alchemy requires collaboration with spiritual energy, but there are only a few who are proficient in that art. As a result, Ludolf will not be able to be of much assistance. After all, only a master of spiritual arts can unveil the secrets of the Temperors. However, Fina tells him not to worry. It's already a big help that Ludolf has allowed her to stay in his town. I mean, she was the one tasked to search for the heritage, so it's nothing Ludolf should be involved in the first place. In response, Ludolf yet again begins showering Fina with compliments, calling her the Empire's pride, and she takes it all at face value. She likes being complimented. Can you really blame her? Anyways, once their meeting is over, Fina takes her leave. On the way back, she thinks about how there is no one skilled in the spiritual arts here in Grey Rock City. Even though she might have some leads for the cure, she cannot do anything without being absolutely certain. It's for the princess's sake, after all, and hence, she has no place for failure. Just then, out of nowhere, she hears a crash behind her. Surprised, she quickly turns back to see what is going on, and stumbles upon the battle between Calder and Laycil. Calder, having been knocked down, has crashed into a nearby wall, unable to even move, whereas Laycil continues to close the distance. Fina recognizes the beaten-up man to be Calder, the one who guided her to the Lord's castle. Alas, Laycil couldn't care less. "Let's end this, Calder," he announces as he points his sword at his throat. Realizing he has been defeated, Calder accepts defeat and surrenders. But that isn't what Laycil wants. Out of nowhere, he stabs Calder in the leg, making him scream like a little girl. He claims he will not let things end just yet. Hearing this, Calder loses it. He questions if this mere slave is really planning on taking the life of a deputy captain under the city lord's command. Nevertheless, isn't this exactly what Calder had planned to do? You see, Laycil has always been one to settle scores, and with what this scumbag did to poor little Xiaomi, he can forget having a peaceful death. As he utters these ominous words, his face is painted with rage. Even Calder's subordinates are left powerless, thinking about how Laycil, despite being only a first-grade SEAL master, was able to completely overpower the deputy commander. Just then, Fina decides to intervene. She asks Laycil why he must kill Calder, even though he has surrendered. As per her, killing a SEAL master is a huge crime, even more so for a slave. But Laycil tells her to back off and mind her own business, said like a true Sigma. Hearing these remarks, Fina is annoyed to no end. Even the city lord treats her with respect, but a slave still dares to show insolence. Are Grey Rock City's slaves all this high and mighty? She wonders. Nah, our boy is just special. Suddenly, Alan walks past them, and upon noticing Laycil there, he calls out to him. As it turns out, Alan was out gathering everything Laycil requested from the neighboring city. He has been trying to find Laycil for a while now, and asks what he is doing here. As a result, Laycil tells him to wait for a while. He is just in the middle of killing a small fry, so it shouldn't take very long. However, sensing his impending death, Calder is left desperate. Within an instant, he changes his tone and begins begging Laycil for mercy, pleading with him to spare his life. Consequently, being the sadist he is, Laycil decides to do just that, but not before inflicting a bit more pain on Calder. Regardless, this marks the end of the ordeal, at least for now, and Laycil decides to go with Alan to his lab, deciding to claim Calder's sword as his own. Meanwhile, Calder is infuriated. Despite his wounds, he is still seeking revenge for being humiliated so badly in front of his men, and claims Laycil is dead meat. Once the captain returns back into town. In addition, Fina, still angered by Laycil's words earlier, also decides to head back and sleep it off. She forgives the brat for acting so rudely this time, since he wasn't aware of her status. Also, how adorable can she be? However, when she overhears Alan and Laycil's conversation, where they are talking about the horn cream, her curiosity is piqued. From the eavesdropping, she figures out that the recipe she found with Alan earlier must have been written by Laycil. In the lab, Laycil is seen complaining about the quality of the materials, though he is just glad to have everything he needs. As such, he borrows Alan's cauldron to start the process, but Alan has other ideas in mind. He demands to know the method to raise his talent level. Eventually, Laycil gives in and asks what Alan's alchemy tier is, learning he's a mere novice. Hearing this, Laycil is disappointed. From his backstory, he expected Alan to at least be a second tier, but it looks like the host guild is just willing to take in anyone at this point. Still, Alan tries to defend himself. He explains that he is a second-grade SEAL master and inquires about Laycil's grades. However, he too is only a novice in combat arts, alchemy arts, and spiritual arts. As a result, Alan also lashes out at him for being mocked, but soon backtracks. "You're talented in spiritual arts," he questions. It's explained that, via harnessing the power of the sacred seal, humanity has forged 3 distinct disciplines: combat arts, found via rigorous physical conditioning; alchemy arts, used by commanding the seal's power to create medicine and equipment; and lastly, spiritual arts, allowing one to conjure magic spells and illusions. Out of all 3, spiritual arts is by far the rarest skill, and hence, there are not many techniques developed for it. Moreover, sacred arts are separated into 5 tiers: novice, second, middle, upper, and elite. People are born with innate alignment for different arts and can raise their tier by mastering techniques. Therefore, seal grades determine one's physicality and strength, while the talent tier determines mastery of high-level techniques. I mean, it would have been more helpful to know this earlier, but thanks, I guess. Suddenly, Laycil places his hand on Alan's back, revealing that he will ignite his soul core with his spiritual energy, and this will allow Alan to heighten his senses and enhance his alchemy skills. Of course, it doesn't come free of cost, and as a temporary drawback, he will feel sluggish after using it. Hence, it's not advised to use it unless one is stuck in a dire situation. Well, with Alan's talent, it's not like he has a choice anyway. On the flip side, Alan comments on how envious he is. Spiritual arts involve the manipulation and refinement of soul energy. And even at the lowest grade, one can grow by leaps and bounds just by possessing the talent. But for Laycil, this is all just luck. Not really though, he got that bloodline remembrance. All of a sudden, Alan begins to glow brightly, and once the process is done, feels an incredible surge of power within his body. As such, Laycil tells him to practice alchemy as much as he can, and he will start seeing improvement. What's more, he then asks him to help out with his medicine, suggesting it might be beneficial to him as well, and Alan agrees, asking what he is making. To this, Laycil explains he is making dragon breath potion, and all they have to do is follow the instructions. Just like that, the duo begins crafting the potion, but Alan messes up each chance he gets, complaining about how it's difficult to refine his control over the seal's powers. Some second-grade master he is. Soon, they complete their mission, and Alan couldn't be happier. Not only did they manage to get 3 potions, they even came out as middle tier. Alas, Laycil is not satisfied with them. Upon closer inspection, he calls this a waste of precious materials, claiming the color of all the potions is different. Apparently, this is due to refinement issues, and Laycil now has to refine them on his own. Not a great idea, since he already has limited power, that too he should be spending on battles and such. After the refinement, he then pours his soul energy into the potion, transforming them into soul elixirs. And so, the potions are finally completed, leaving Alan flabbergasted at how the Landlot family is really something else. Seeing this masterful technique, Alan remarks how it is almost like the heritage of the Soul Temperors, and, as per Laycil, this is exactly what these potions are made of. Hearing these words, Alan is perplexed to no end. Bro is casually brewing lost alchemy products that everyone is desperately searching for. Obviously, Alan is skeptical of this claim, and thinks Laycil must be joking or something. I mean, why would even a slave have such a potion? To this, Laycil reveals that years ago, someone journeying through the Saints Guilds conducting alchemy research on the fusion of souls. However, the research was ultimately banned by the Empire due to the latent risks it posed. In addition, the person conducting the research had her identity hidden with his father's assistance, explaining that the person was none other than his own mother, Laycil Lanlot. As far as Laycil is aware, there is a chapter of her life that she wished to remain forgotten, and as such, she dedicated herself to research on spiritual arts and became famed throughout the Morea as a genius, and that's how her past remains secret. Her post as a temperer. Nevertheless, to Laycil, this is nothing noteworthy, and he acts nonchalantly about this crucial information. On the other hand, Alan couldn't be more perplexed. From his perspective, even the top guns have been running amok for this sort of info, making him question if this slave is really planning on turning the world upside down. Regardless, Laycil decides to compensate Alan with a dragon blood potion, but warns him to not go around blabbing about how he has the heritage of the Soul Temperors or else. But if this isn't a big deal, then why threaten the man? Hearing this, Alan is taken aback. Moreover, he has no idea what he can even do with this potion, stating he has never even heard of it before. Consequently, Laycil claims that one's energy reserve is limited, particularly when the seal grade is low. Because of this, apart from natural recovery, they can absorb the surrounding power of nature to restore their energy, although in small quantities. And that's where the Dragon Breath Potion comes in. The potion can significantly enhance the absorption, ultimately accelerating recovery, greatly beneficial for their cultivation. Finally getting a grasp of this potion's true potential, greed overtakes Alan, and he snatches the potion right out of Laycil's hands. In his mind, with this new potion coupled with his newly awakened soul core, his talent level should reach the second tier in a matter of moments. He hopes to finally make his return to the capital of the guild. Just then, Laycil intervenes, asking if Alan is really alright with that. But why wouldn't he be? Everything he has done so far is for this purpose. However, Laycil has a better plan. Aren't you interested in becoming a true elite? He questions. The fact is, even if Alan returns to the capital, what can he hope to accomplish as a second-grade seal master? He can only spend his insignificant life earning an empty title. Such a strong rebuttal makes Alan shy away, giving Laycil the perfect opportunity to pitch his idea. He tells Alan to stay here for another 2 months, promising to take him to the third-grade sacred seal if he does so, under one condition. That is, act as my referrer, he tells Alan. He wants to escape the slave system through the showdown judgments. According to him, criminals, if referred by a seal master of second grade or higher, can earn absolution from the authorities and be freed from their slave status. In order to do so, they must prove their strength, and they can then reclaim their freedom, though they will be under the strict watch of the authorities and the referrers. Nonetheless, he decides to head back for the day. On his way, he comments on how, no matter how much power he has, he cannot attempt to escape his current situation, or else the slave mark will render him a fugitive. It would make traveling across towns a pain in the bottom, and the other slaves might even be punished for his actions as well. Hence, he needs a bump in strength, although it's pretty clear he can't accomplish that by just physical training. Soon, he returns back to the lodging, where Ermau immediately begins scolding him. The news of Laycil injuring Calder has spread like wildfire, and Ermau is concerned about the trouble it will bring. Of course, Laycil is not worried, simply announcing he will kill Calder if he dares seek trouble again. But Ermau is not convinced. As per him, even if Calder and his lackeys are no match for Laycil, they have someone stronger on their side. The captain of the Shadow Iron Group, Tiffin Apaldi. Unlike Calder, Tiffin is not a half-assed warrior, and is also a commander of the Grey Rock main fighting force. In his mind, there's no way Laycil is going to be let off the hook after embarrassing one of his subordinates. But hearing this news, all Laycil can do is grin. To him, the situation has now become much more interesting. There, he decides that Tiffin will become a stepping stone on his way to greater success. Of course, none of his slave companions have any faith in him. Well, everyone except our angel Xiaomi. Meanwhile, at the Saints Guild, Fina, along with Edward and Hogg, a third-grade seal master from the guild, are seen to be working on a celestial fern. As it turns out, this fern can absorb the nether malady and transform it into the frost lymph, which can be eliminated by certain herbs, thus creating a potential cure. Though Fina is still in search of suitable herbs, and the fern requires further refining, their goal can be accomplished by more research and experimentation. Fina's ingenious idea leaves Hogg and Edward speechless, and they shower her with praise, allowing Fina to bask in the glory. Is that what you call an attention seeker? Suddenly, she mentions Laycil and asks who he actually is. Obviously, Edward has no idea. In the first place, the Saints Guild has no slaves, meaning Laycil probably belongs to the city lord. However, his name does ring a bell, and eventually, Edward recalls that Laycil refers to Laycil Lanlot, the once great family. Laycil is the grandson of the first Blade King, and the son of the people who established the Saints Guild. Still, no matter how much glory his family had, Laycil is now a mere slave. But this news leaves Fina excited to no end. If what Edward says is true, it means Laycil is the son of spiritual arts master Alina. To her, Elena is her most revered idol. She even saw her once as a kid and has been trying to reach her high standards. What's more, Fina even had doubts that Elena might have been the legendary Temper. Regardless, this explains how Laycil managed to write such a peculiar recipe. And in that case, she must report her findings to the city lord. And so, she ventures to the city lord's office, where she finds Alan already there, trying to convince Ludolf to give Laycil a chance. Upon Fina's arrival, Ludolf happily welcomes her and her companions, suggesting they give their much-needed insight on the situation. As such, he explains what is going on, adding that there haven't been any cases of slaves being given their freedom back after committing treason. However, Alan argues that it doesn't matter. Although there have been no similar matters in the past, the case is not prohibited by law. The Empire has also forgiven generals of the enemy in the past after all. But Hogg is completely against the idea. Regardless of whether or not they can pardon a traitor, the issue is, as Alan is the referrer, is he even willing to bear the responsibility? He questions if Alan is aware of the consequences of acting as a referrer. Hearing this, Alan gets annoyed. He knows everything all too well, but he has already been brainwashed. In a flashback, Laycil gaslights him into believing that he is the only one who can help Alan raise his talent. But there are countless numbers of second-grade seal masters who can act as his referrer. Nevertheless, Fifina comes in clutch. She deems this to be a great idea. If Laycil is truly capable of passing the judgment, he should possess great prowess. If so, he can be recruited into Grey Rock City's fighting forces. Consequently, Hogg accepts Alan's proposal, stating the guild will bear responsibility. Therefore, he wants to be the judge of the showdown, conducting it with the highest intensity. In addition, if Laycil is to fail, he also promises to promptly expel Alan from the guild. Obviously, Finan is concerned that this is too overboard, but Ludolf finds this to be a measure of how serious the Saints Guild truly is. Even Alan, though fearful, agrees to it, and at last, Ludolf announces that the trial will be conducted 3 days later in the arena. Meanwhile, Laycil is seen cultivating his combat arts. Using his sacred power, he controls huge boulders, lifting them in the air like nothing. Apparently, this is all thanks to the Dragon Breath Potion. Using its power, he has already become quite strong and reached the second tier in combat arts. Not only that, once he can attain his freedom, his growth rate is sure to increase exponentially. All the while at the Shadow Iron Squad's assembly hall, Calder is seen kneeling on the ground, cowering in fear as he gets chewed out. It just so happens that Tiffin has finally returned to the city and is enraged after learning the entire world has been turned upside down during his absence. Not only has Fiel, a high-ranking member, been left a cripple, but even Calder has been wounded, not to mention how the opponent was just a mere slave. Obviously, Calder tries to save face, claiming Laycil must have been on some sort of drug. Up until now, he was a wimp, but out of nowhere, he has awakened the sacred seal. However, Tiffin cares not for his nonsense. He reveals that the sole reason Calder enjoys the position of vice captain is because of his late brother, who was sacrificed. But Calder keeps on justifying that he made a grave error. Still, Calder keeps on defending himself. He proclaims that he simply underestimated the foe and, once he is recovered, vows to chop down Laycil with his sword. However, this infuriates Tiffin even more. The fact is, Laycil is the city lord's slave. How on earth is the squad going to be able to face the city lord if one of his slaves has been killed? He tells him to clean up the mess, since Calder has already shattered the Shadow Iron group's reputation. In the first place, this sort of trouble shouldn't have been stirred up. What's more, he reveals that Laycil is trying to regain his freedom through the showdown judgment, explaining that Calder is in a greater world of hurt if Laycil manages to obtain his legal identity. If this is the case, Calder questions what on earth they are supposed to do. Should they just let Laycil off the hook? However, that isn't what Tiffin meant. After scolding him and calling him an idiot, he orders him to eliminate Laycil through external means. Things must get settled without any issues before he is able to pass judgment. Talk about being underhanded. Still, pretty effective if you ask me. With this, Tiffin walks off, leaving Calder to begin making preparations for their plan. On the other hand, Laycil is seen dreaming about the past, where he was made to undergo hellish training by his grandfather. As he wakes up from his dream, he is pissed off. Even though he has inherited the prowess and expertise of his family, he didn't inherit all their memories. Because of this, he is curious to know just why Leba, the first Blade King who took pride so highly, betrayed the Empire. Alas, before he can complete his thoughts, he is ordered to get back to work and is sent to the warehouse. And so, he makes his way to the warehouse, but on the way, he encounters a helpless-looking girl. From the looks of it, she has let some of her stones fall and looks at Laycil for help. But being the absolute Chad he is, Laycil ignores her, not even taking a second look. Because of this, the woman begins acting strangely. Out of nowhere, she bumps into Laycil, claiming to be dizzy, and asks for his help. However, all this has done is make him angry, and he scolds her. Despite his cold demeanor, he ultimately helps the girl, and she, as thanks, offers him some water. Seeing the glass, Laycil is skeptical at first, but drinks it. But as soon as he does, he collapses to the ground, painting the girl's face with a sinister grin. Back at Alan's lab at the Saint Guild, he is giving it his all to advance to the second tier, and is eventually able to do so. He compliments Laycil's methods, just like he said Alan's perception has been enhanced by the soul core, and the dragon breath potion has increased his sacred seal prowess by 20%. What's more, Egan gave him a difficult recipe that continues to provide challenges and forces him to level up. All this makes Alan really glad that he decided to become his referrer. Well, not really. As it turns out, he's distressed. He wonders why on earth he even agreed to the proposal back then. All he wanted to do was return to the capital, but here he is now in the middle of a big gamble. As he contemplates what happened, he just can't accept it. There is no way he would agree to the harm in his right state of mind. I mean, Laycil isn't one to stay away from trouble, meaning it will only bring Alan harm to be his referrer. All this leaves him to come to the conclusion that Laycil must have cast an illusion on him. As per him, there was a strange spark in Laycil's eye, claiming they acted a spell on him and controlled his mind. Meanwhile, at a local pub, Calder pays the Darkfold Union for their quick completion of the mission. Apparently, he ordered an assassin to kill Laycil. Calder, just in case, confirms if the slave is really dead, and the assassin, revealed to be the woman from before, does just that. However, out of nowhere, Calder's face begins turning blue, and before you know it, he begins choking. In addition, the woman also seems to have snapped back into reality, though she is clearly confused. As Calder collapses to the ground, the woman finally starts regaining some of her memory. In a flashback, once she poisoned Laycil, she began to toy with his corpse. But, much to her bewilderment, Laycil was not dead. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, putting the assassin into a spell. With this, he reveals he already saw through all her plans. Regardless, he didn't expect a Shadow Iron group to resort to such ruthless acts. And so, thinking it would be impolite to not go all in, Laycil created this sinister plan. In the present, the woman is pinned to the table by Calder's bodyguards, who curse her for poisoning their captain. Of course, the woman trio tries to defend herself, but not to any avail. You reap what you sow, as they say. Back towards Laycil, who returns after dealing with the assassination. On the way, he bumps into Fina, who claims she just wants to talk. Obviously, though, Laycil is a bit cautious, especially since he just dealt with an annoyance. On the flip side, at the slaves' quarters, the other slaves are seen discussing how Laycil is participating in a showdown judgment and won't stay a slave much longer. This news bums everyone out, and they feel a bit conflicted about their friend leaving this place. In their eyes, this is all thanks to him awakening his seal powers. However, Xiaomi, who is doing errands, happens to overhear this and is left distraught. Anyway, just a bit of backstory. Seal Masters are taken in for their arts, and upon reaching the middle tier, their mastery of the talent is acknowledged. Generally speaking, Seal Masters are only experts in one specific talent and are titled accordingly. There are only a select few who can master 2 talents simultaneously. These people too are titled accordingly and given tasks as per their qualifications. However, there are still some who manage to master all 3 types of talents. These people are referred to as the Trinity Sages. Of course, they come from far and few in between. Back towards Laycil, who is still thinking of Fina as an assassin. Not that we can blame him, though. Fina reveals that although Laycil's showdown judgment has been accepted, the trial itself won't be an easy one. Nevertheless, all he can do at this moment is try and remember who this chick is. Ultimately, he recalls her as the same meddlesome woman who interrupted his battle with Calder. Obviously, being remembered as a meddlesome woman isn't a great source of happiness for Fina, but still, she leaves it at that. All the while, Laycil comments on how Fina is overflowing with sacred seal energy. He can see that she's a 4th grade seal master. Also, alchemist seal masters aren't as skilled in battle as the combat seal masters. Still, he inquires if there is anything noteworthy about the examiner in his trial. Fina announces that the chief examiner is going to be Hog of the Saint Guild. As he is a 3rd grade seal master, he won't allow Laycil to pass easily. Still, at least in Laycil's eyes, alchemist masters pose him no threat. The fact is, he's already strong enough to overpower his 2nd grade combat arts seal master. However, Fina finds this way of thinking flawed. As per her, alchemist seal masters have their own specialized way of fighting. Moreover, it also happens that Hog is an elite user of dark alchemy as well, making him all the more fearsome. Hearing this, Laycil becomes a bit worried. Of course, alchemists aren't battle-centric, but when it comes to dark alchemy, things are quite different. Still, he questions if this is all Fina came here to do, and she, in a flustered manner, offers a helping hand. The trial is going to be pretty hard, and hence, she wants to help Laycil out. Seeing her sincerity, Laycil is touched and asks why she's going so far for him. A mere slave. Conveniently, Fina just claims to be an admirer of his talents and wants to see him free. Hearing this, Laycil suddenly gets closer to her. If this is the case, and something Fina could help with, lend me some money. He demands from Fina in a greedy tone. Yeah, money is always helpful after all. Regardless, after his conversation with Fina, Laycil begins heading back, thinking about how Fina is sure to have ulterior motives behind all her flattery. Soon, he reaches his lodging where he finds Xiaomi sitting on the porch waiting for him. As it turns out, he has missed dinner time, and hence, she reserves some food for him. Seeing this, Laycil is thankful to her for always taking care of him. There, as he eats, Xiaomi reveals she heard Laycil is taking part in the judgment. Even she thinks he is incredible. All this time, he has been going on and on about breaking free from slavery, and now, he finally has a chance at it. However, the thought of him leaving her alone in this place makes her extremely sad. Noticing the disappointment on her face, Laycil comforts her. Patting her on the head, he claims he will not leave her alone. Apparently, he has made arrangements for her to be freed as well. He thinks of Xiaomi as a little sister he needs to care for, but that feeling isn't mutual. As he pats her, Xiaomi is left red as a beet. Trying to hide her embarrassment, she creates some distance between them, telling him to stay away. That night, Laycil lies on his bed, feeling uneasy. He realizes that the trial might be more difficult than he imagined, and his current strength could fail him. Still, this doesn't change what he has to do. I need a breakthrough, he thinks. Therefore, for the following 3 days, he trains as hard as he can and gives it his all to become stronger. Eventually, the fated day of the showdown judgment arrives. At the arena, Ludolf announces the trial is about to begin. If Laycil passes, all of his crimes will be written off and his status as a civilian will be restored. For giving him this chance, Laycil thanks the city lord. In the meantime, the slaves, watching the battle from the sidelines, cheer their friend on, something that interests and angers Ludolf at the same time. As such, he orders the slaves' attendance bonus to be removed. What a petty guy. There, Fina is also seen to be watching the battle, looking forward to Laycil's performance. On the battlefield, Alan stumbles his way over to Laycil. Seeing him in this condition, Laycil asks what's wrong, but Alan explains he has been left mentally drained after the gruesome 2 days of internal audits. Anyway, he hands Laycil the sword he stole from Calder. Just then, Hogg enters the ring as well, introducing himself. Seeing him come, Laycil is a bit surprised that this foe is a dwarf, whereas Alan tells him not to lose this fight, since his future depends on it. Of course, Hogg has no intention of making this easy, and vows to not let Laycil pass at any cost. From his perspective, the idiocy of Alan has garnered down the Saint Guild by acting as a referrer to a traitor. If Laycil is allowed to pass the trial, the guild will be tied with a traitor of the Empire yet again. Thus, Hogg can simply not allow the guild to be implicated in the Empire's turmoil. But these words trigger something inside Laycil. Enraged, he questions if Hogg is referring to his father and claims that his father threw mud on the guild's reputation. In response, Hogg remains adamant about his cause. This is a fact at the end of the day, and he has to safeguard the Saint Guild's pride. Just like that, the two begin clashing their auras, and at last, Ludolf signals for the battle to begin. Inside the ring, Laycil is stunned. Even in an organization that his father created, there are some that refuse to accommodate him. The only thing this conversation has done is make him sure that restoring the Landlot family's lineage will not be something simple, even if he does break free from his situation as a slave. Also, if this is the case, he vows to show those who condemn his family the wrath of the Landlot bloodline. Just like that, he gears up, going all in from the start and taking up a stance. Seeing this, Hogg also prepares himself and immediately unleashes the dark arts.